class. In this video, I'm going to be showing you all about how to complete your 5E lesson plan assignment this week. So first you're going to start by selecting a 1st through 8th grade NGSS science standard. Let's head over to that website. Here, when I'm on the NGSS website, I can go ahead and click standards, read the standards, and I'll be able to do a search by either grade level or discipline. For my example, I'm choosing 1st grade and I'd like some physical science. So I'm going to go ahead and search. And I can see this is a 1st grade standard by the coding. There's a number 1 in front. Let's take a look at this standard. So this standard says that students will be able to plan and conduct investigations that provide evidence that vibrating materials can make sound and that sound can make materials vibrate. So this is all about students doing investigations to figure out that sound and vibrations are connected. You can see under the core disciplinary idea that this is one of those core ideas we want students to learn. Sounds can make matter vibrate, or vibration of matters can make sound. So you're going to want to put this standard right on your lesson plan. You might also consider putting your science and engineering practice and cross-cutting concept, as that's good practice. So for our science and engineering practice, students are planning and carrying out investigations, and our cross-cutting concept is all about cause and effect. So they will do simple tests that can be designed to gather evidence to support or refute student ideas about causes. So after you choose your standard, you're going to want to then look at your class profile and add that to your 5E lesson plan template. You're going to create a plan using that 5E model of instruction, and you're going to ensure all instruction, activities, and assessments are aligned to this chosen standard, and your objectives should be measurable. Let's go ahead and take a look at our 5E lesson plan template. So our 5E lesson plan template looks a little different than your traditional lesson plan. As you can see, it starts off with the basic information that you'll find in your traditional lesson plan, but it has the summary, your materials, those student factors from your class profile, your standards. It also includes that objective, just like our other lesson plan template. But then we have something different here. We have a lesson focused question. So you're going to want to write a question that's aligned to your learning target that's going to demonstrate this overall big idea that students should learn through this lesson. Let's go back to our standard. So our standard, this core idea, this big idea we want students to understand is sounds can make matter vibrate, and vibrating matter can make sound. So we really want them to understand this connection to matter and sound. So for example, I might put a lesson focused question like, how are sounds created? That's a big idea that I want students to understand. After that, you're going to want to go into academic language. So what is some of that key vocabulary that is going to be necessary for students to be able to learn? In a 5E lesson plan, a lot of time this academic language is taught in the context of the lesson, not explicitly before, but sometimes teachers do teach it before. So here you're going to tell me how you're going to develop those terms and how you'll help students teach it. For example, in this sound experience, I used this in 3rd grade when I taught 3rd grade, and students would say, I feel things moving, I feel them shaking. And as they would say that, I would be like, oh, you feel vibrations. And so that's where I taught them the word, was as they needed the word when they were trying to describe what they felt in their experience. Then you can include a summative assessment here at the top. Explain how you'll measure the learning targets and objectives. Remember, summative assessments might include multiple standards or have a larger project, so it doesn't have to be specific to this day, but it could be a larger assessment if you so choose. Down below, you'll see there's differentiation strategies. These come at the beginning where we talk about how we're going to differentiate our instruction for all of our students on our class profile. Think about the gifted students, the English language learners, the special education students on IEPs. How will you differentiate any activities, and how will you differentiate any assessment? You might end up filling this out after you do this part. Next, you'll find instruction. Here we see the 5 E's. The first of the 5 E's is to engage students. So, how are you going to present this in a way that's going to engage them and get them excited about this question that you have above? Try to think of this as kind of the anticipatory set. How are we going to get them excited learning? Use this guidance to help you think through, but delete it when you're done because that'll help bring your Lopes Wright similarity report down. You'll add some probing questions because, as we've learned in constructivist and inquiry based teaching, teachers use questions to support student learning. So, through each part of your lesson plan, you're going to want to have good questions that you'll ask students to help facilitate their learning as they're going through these experiences. After you engage students with that question and get them excited from the learning, it's time to explore. So, for example, with this sound standard, I would have different things for students to test sound out. How are they going to make sounds, and how can they use their senses to observe sounds and try to figure out what is causing sound? I'll have developed some questions here for students in how I can support their learning and getting them to think about what is happening as they're observing. In the 5E lesson plan, the teaching comes during this explain phase. So now that students have this experience of exploring sound, now it's my turn to come in and help explain what was happening. So I'll have students share what they learned, share their results, and make some maybe conclusions. And I'm going to help tie those things together. Now's the time where I would introduce sound is created from vibrations based on what everyone had shared from their explorations. We found that there was moving and shaking, and we call those vibrations. And so I would go into some teaching on sound. This is also an area where I might develop my vocabulary words. So now that students have had an experience to anchor it in, now I give them that word that they need. Vibrations. That shaking or moving is called vibrations. You'll develop a few questions that'll help work through students' misconceptions that you figured out during that explore phase. As you were walking around, you might have noticed some misconceptions that students thought. In the elaborate phase, students are going to expand on what they've learned. So that now that they've learned that sounds are created by vibrations, how can they apply that to a new situation? How can they test ideas more thoroughly and add on to those additional relationships? So, for example, I might have them explore how a speaker works, or how a bell works, or how we can give different tones when we are using an instrument. Um, and so I might have them develop their own instruments and talk about how we can get different tones using things like different size string, or having um, different holes and different placements like a flute. And so this elaborate part is where they're going to now take that knowledge and go and apply it in often a real life situation. Finally, is your evaluate phase. This is your formative assessment. How are you continually observing students to learn and monitor about their progress? This doesn't always happen at the very end. Sometimes you're doing this during some of these other phases, during this elaborate phase. You might even have them present what they did in the elaborate phase as your evaluation for their learning. After you're finished with writing your lesson plan, you're going to add a rationale. In your rationale, you're going to want to explain um, how you've engaged all students in the 5E. And so the key here is all students. Think about the students who will struggle with expressing their ideas verbally, possibly English language learners. How could we give them the language they need to be able to express ideas or ask questions? Think about my special education students who might have a little bit of trouble with understanding the task and maybe needing to break it into smaller chunks or pairing them with a group. Think about your gifted students and how we can push them to a higher level. And so you're going to want to have this rationale explain how you've engaged all students in the 5 E's. Now that I've gone over what the lesson plan should look like, let's take a look at the rubric. Looking at the rubric is best practice because this is how you're graded. So the first criteria is the 5E lesson plan components. And to score a target, you need to have all 5E lesson plan components addressed. Your activities need to clearly promote critical thinking and problem solving skills. So students should be the ones thinking, students should be the ones solving the problems. You'll want to create an atmosphere where you're showing inquiry, like I explained an inquiry experience with the sound. And then you'll want to have descriptions for each component that are thorough. Don't give me basic, I'm just going to have them explore sound. Go into detail what that's going to look like, what materials students are going to explore, how they're going to take notes, how they're going to write their observations down. For the next graded component, we have standards and learning target. Here, you're going to explain how all components of your lesson plan, or I'm not explaining, sorry. I will be evaluating how all components of your lesson plan are aligned with that learning target. So I'm going to be looking for everything being very connected to your learning target and your standard, and that every action step along the way is connected and aligned. Then you'll be graded on your rationale, and you are going to explain how student engagement is clear in all 5 E's and includes several supporting details to support those lesson plans. So I included all students in the explained phase when I did this or that. So be very clear. Last, you'll have your mechanics and your paper format. So make sure that you use that lesson plan template correctly and thoroughly. So here I've given you more information on how to complete the 5E lesson plan. Please do not use this standard for your lesson plan since I gave a lot of information on how to teach this standard. I want to see you do it with another standard. If you have any questions as you're working on the assignment, don't hesitate to reach out.